we now have all these women that have degrees, good jobs, can provide for themselves. They don't need no man. You know, they need a man like a fish needs a bicycle. When are all the men going to grow up and step up to wife up all these women? And what they don't understand is the pool of guys that are above them, because women only date across and up on the socioeconomic scale because of hypergamy. The pool is small. It's not big. Like there's not an army of like hundreds of thousands of men sitting in a dark corner somewhere hiding from these women, and they're just going to grow up one day and show up. That's not how it works. They just don't understand the dynamics of it.
Yeah, and by the way, those men who are above that level also are receiving so much attention from women that the likelihood of those men staying, monogamous is extremely low. It was a great book. I don't know if you've ever read Satoshi Kanazawa's first book, which was Why Beautiful People Have More Daughters. He wrote another book called The Intelligence Paradox. He's been like almost canceled for both of these books, by the way. In The Intelligence Paradox, he talks about as people become more like as you get into higher IQ stratification, they're more likely to cheat. And also, there's other studies that show men are more likely to cheat as you get higher and higher in the income stratus, which is like the top 1%, I believe, is $545,000 a year in the United States. As you get higher and higher, and that this is something that Myron talks about frequently on Fresh and Fit, where it's like you want a guy who's 6'2" and makes $550,000 a year. The likelihood of you getting him is low. The likelihood of you locking him down is extremely low. And the likelihood of you getting him, locking him down, and him not being with any other women is astronomically low. And this is just a function. And the girls are like, no, but it doesn't feel like that should be true. I feel like because I watched this Disney movie, I feel like I deserve this. And feelings that don't have anything to do with it.
Yeah. So there's two things there. So, I mean, first of all, a man's test of loyalty comes when he's successful. A woman's test of loyalty comes when a man is unsuccessful, right? So that kind of sums up what you just talked about there. The other thing too, with that whole like I feel sort of thing, I'm about to ruin this for you and your audience tonight. So I'm going to apologize in advance. But when you start paying attention to the language used between men and women and weaker sort of soy boy beta males, you're going to notice women mostly lead with I feel like. I feel like that's not right. I feel like there should be more like that. Intelligent men that lead with rational thought use words like I think. Okay. Also, beta males, soy boys, like the weaker sort of guys with a low T, they'll also use a lot of the I feel language too. So pay attention to that because you're going to hear it everywhere now.
Yeah, no, definitely. The I feel thing was really big. I like to lead with I just read a study. That's what I like to instead of I think.
Yeah,
I like to lead
even
with
better.
Here's a study of 17,000 women who were surveyed anonymously. Here's a study.
Here's some facts.
Yeah, here's some facts. Here's again, I love the GSS survey, the one that states that 28% of men had zero sexual partners in the last year,
Right.
and this was done in 2018. If you look at the way that scale was going, that hockey stick, right now in 2022, we're probably most likely around 33% of men have had zero sexual partners in the last year. Now, when we look at this, when I try to explain to people, and by the way, some of these are men also, when I try to explain the concept of hypergamy and how the hypergamy scale where men are always going equal or down and women are always going equal or up. When I try to explain that to them and I get denial, I'm like, okay, well, two irrefutable facts, unassailable facts. Number one, we can see on Tinder that 80% of men are considered to be unattractive. And secondly, from the GSS survey, we can see that 33% of men are having zero sexual partners. And so this shows this is an absolutely unassailable, irrefutable fact that we're having a great number of women going after a small number of men at the top. And then anecdotally, that's where I come in secondarily. Like, I'm friends with Dan Bilzerian. He's a buddy of mine. I hang out with him. It is madness how many women I literally listen and tell me, you know what I would never do? I'd never have sex with Dan. That's always what they say right before they have sex with Dan. It's one of the craziest things I've ever said. It's another thing, my friend Vegas Dave is the same kind of thing. Right before they have sex with Vegas Dave, they're like, ew, I would never have sex with Vegas Dave. And then they do it. And it's just it's so crazy to me. And it's one of these situations where, like, I understand that the world isn't the way you think it should be, but and by the way, this is not a function of culture. This is another thing I want to get people to understand. This idea that there's a few guys at the top getting this. When you read about Mubarak the bloodthirsty from, I believe, Morocco had 860 kids or something like that.
Ishmael the bloodthirsty.
Ishmael the bloodthirsty. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And then
Moroccan,
also, Genghis Khan in his situation, where like 1/2% of all males on the planet have his Y chromosome. This is this is not something that just started recently. It's just social media has made it to where there used to be a bifurcation. There used to be a dating scene in Wichita and another dating scene in Waco. There used to be a dating scene in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and another dating scene in Secaucus, New Jersey. And now there isn't that anymore. Because of social media, they've all sort of pushed into this one massive dating scene. And the reason why I bring this up is there's this girl I used to know. I'm still friends with. Her name is Jojo Von Southey. She's from Wichita, Kansas. She was a Hooters waitress there. She gets discovered, and she ends up flying out to Los Angeles, and she's the first girl I know, to my knowledge, she's the first girl to hit 1 million followers on Instagram. I met her when she was 19.
Hmm.
And since then, she's just been traveling the world, doing these magazine covers. She has 10 million followers on Instagram. And my point was, there was probably an injury attorney or a cardiologist that lived in Wichita who was going to marry this girl, but she got pulled to Dan Bilzerian, literally Dan Bilzerian's house. And because of that, now we have this stratification that's happened where there's a few guys at the top who are showing signs of fitness, nice cars. They're able to be funny, the ability to network, all these signs of fitness in men, and these men are having incredible success. And then we have a group of men that are completely being ignored.
Yeah, it's just the reality of the world, man. You know, like we know that the vast majority of women have reproduced throughout history,
Yeah.
but I think something like 25% of men have reproduced throughout history. So
Oh, it's
for most guys, it's been a dead end.
Yeah, yeah, 25%. Yeah, correct. Yeah, I was trying to explain this to some people before because they were like ungrateful, and I was like, "Well, do you realize before the year 1850, half the Earth's population died before the age of 5, and way more than 50% of men who've ever lived died a virgin. Way more than 50%.
Yeah.
And then when they hear that, they're just. I had a friend of mine, a female friend. I kept throwing these facts at her, and her response was, "It's not my response. Your dick is not my responsibility." And I was like, "There you go. That's the proof of what I was trying to say before." And then in the end, then they're like, "Well, there's no good men." And I was like, I know 50 dudes who would go out with you right now, do anything you want, but because you keep seeing the dude with the Lambo, you can't. What's it called? Recalibrate to understand what's going on, and then you end up, next thing you know, you're 40 and you don't have a relationship, you don't have any kids, you don't have a husband, and that's the reason why.
Yeah, and those same 40-year-old women are the ones sitting on The View talking about, men need to, man up or grow up or whatever. It's like,
Yeah.
there's no 40-year-old guys that I know that are worth their salt, that have their life together, that have a nice car, a great life, lots of money, influential, they're competent, they're interesting, that are dating 40-year-old women. They're dating
Yeah.
younger, hotter women. That's just what men do.
Yeah. This is another thing. You've interviewed Tristan and you've interviewed Justin on your show, Tristan Tate and Justin
Yeah,
Waller.
Tristan, Justin, Andrew. Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing that they made a video together, and I'm from Texas, Justin's from Louisiana, and he talked about Gentleman Game, and I was curious what you thought about this because I know Tristan got a lot of heat for this, talking about the simping being the inequitable display of value or whatever of attention. What do you think about that? Like kind of a different way of dealing with this.
Yeah, I think he's right. I mean, what's the definition of a simp? Yes, 10 people, you get 10 different answers, but I think Tristan's definition is probably the closest one that I would agree with. It's an unfair exchange of attention and resources with a woman. And the vast majority of guys today are definitely simping. Like you would solve a lot of the problems out there today with women's entitlement issues if guys would stop simping and
Yeah.
level up. But it's easier to simp than to do 100 push-ups a day.
Yeah, definitely. That is kind of a rough thing. The other thing is, like, I don't know that we can fix either side. I feel like we just kind of have to. Again, we see the river. We can either try to swim upstream or build a hydroelectric dam. That I feel.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm more of a enjoy the decline guy.
There you
It's
go.
like, that's the direction society's going in. I'm going to draw you a map and put some landmines on it. Don't step on them, walk around them, and you should be good.
So, I mean, speaking personally for your own experience, you being a guy with a McLaren and a Lamborghini and 600,000 followers on Instagram, in shape, with your own show, doing well. I'm assuming it's been easier for you in this sort of like age of. For me, I'll tell you, as a 45-year-old man, I've never found it easier in my life because my competition are guys who watch posts or guys who are watching Machine Gun Kelly in a pink dress. Like that, you understand what I'm saying? And like, well, that's my competition. It's like that's not really competition.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot easier when you got your shit together. Like I'm close to 50 now, right? So I'm in an LTR. My gal's great. I have a great life. I can do pretty much anything I want. Like I can go where I want. If it doesn't work out in my relationship, fine. I can get a new one or I can get a whole bunch of new ones simultaneously. It doesn't matter. I don't worry the way that I did. Like I don't have the same scarcity mindset that I did maybe in my 20s or even in maybe my mid 30s, sort of thing. The sooner guys can figure out, how to unplug from the matrix and really take a good close look at the way the world really works, not what you've been told the way that it works, the better off that you'll be. Like I basically wrote this book for my 20-year-old self. And Fortunately, the guys that are reading it seem to be getting what they need out of it, man. Like I run into a lot of people around the world now. I was just down in Mexico, down in Cabo, and I was surprised how many like young Mexican kids came up to me and are like, "Yo, I read your book," and they barely speak English, but I read your book and I watch your videos with subtitles. You changed my life. I got this real estate. I got out of this crap relationship. So it's great, man. I mean, the sooner you can do it, the better off that you're going to be 100%.